So, welcome everybody. This is a special Shabbat. We begin the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, and this is the book that teaches us how to manage the house of God. That's why it's called Leviticus, the from the word Levi, of course, and the Levites were in charge of the temple. So it is, of course, goes over all the types of offerings that we have, all the rules of the temple, and the priestly conduct, and so forth. We just finished the book of Exodus last week with the conclusion of the building of the Mishkan of the tabernacle. So now it's time to see how to actually use that vehicle that we created. It's like building a car and now finally igniting it and starting to use it. So the first thing that the first parasha, the first part of Leviticus deals with is the sacrifices, because the way to use that mechanism of the house of God is through offerings, through sacrifices. Now, we're gonna break it down and unpack what it means to have sacrifices and what sacrifices mean. So just before we started recording, Deborah said, what's the ultimate sacrifice?" And she said, "To bring the soul." And I said, "Okay, now we're ready to start recording, because the soul is what God wants from us. God doesn't want any of, and I'm not saying it just because I'm guessing it, it's because the Bible is replete with these sayings from God, that he's not interested in our animal sacrifice if it doesn't come with our soul. And if you think about it, the first offering that was brought to God in the Bible was in the first siblings, Cain and Abel. When Cain and Abel brought their offerings to God, God accepted the offerings from Abel, but did not accept it from Cain. And why is that? To understand that is to understand the whole idea of offerings. So when Cain's offering was not accepted, he was very upset. And God said to him, "It's not that I don't want to accept your offering, it's just you need to do something better." And what was that better thing? When they both brought the sacrifices, it says that Abel brought, or Cain, we'll start with Cain. Cain brought from what he had. So he had whatever he was growing at that point, and he brought from what he had to God. But when it came to Abel, it says Abel brought the best he had. And Abel was the shepherd. Cain was the land owner, so to speak. Cain comes from the word kinyan, from ownership. And that was why he was jealous at his brother, because he said, "I own the land. How dare you use my land for your flock?" So when his offering was accepted and Cain's was not, the rage and the jealousy overcame him, and he ended up killing his brother. So there are two, really, understanding this story is really understanding the offering. So, one, we see that the offerings have to be from the best we have for God to accept it. Because if it's just a mechanical thing that we bring whatever we have and just to mark that we brought it, that's not what God is looking for. God is looking for our soul, for the intention, the inner motivation. And the second thing is we see that there's jealousy in this world, and people can kill each other over it, physically or otherwise, assassinate their good names, or do like try to rob them and take their property, as we've seen in Jewish history and other human history. So there are two things that we need to deal with when we bring the offering. One is the relationship with God, and the second one is the relationship with man. Right? So, and of course, we just received the Ten Commandments in Mount Sinai with the two tablets, and one side is relationship between God and man, and the other side is between people. So we see that this is the theme, the repeating theme that we need as human beings. These are the two aspects of our lives: the relationship with heaven and the relationship with earth. So when you bring a sacrifice in the tent of meeting, that's why it's called the tent of meeting, because we're meeting God and we're meeting man. So you can say it's like vertical and horizontal relationship between people. It's horizontal, and of course between heaven and earth is vertical in one sense, just to have this imagery. So when you bring an offering, you have to think of these two things. One is that you are bringing it the best you have and with the best intention, and that redeems you from or connects us to the relationship with God. And actually, the word itself, sacrifice in Hebrew, is korban. And the word korban comes from the word karov, which means close, to be closer to God or closer to man. But really, it means to bring us closer. So today, of course, we don't have the temple. We don't have the animal offerings, and the rabbis substituted because of a verse in Proverb that says, "Parim neshalma sfatenu." Our lips are going to pay as we were paying for bulls, for the animal sacrifices. And bulls are the highest and most expensive offering. To bring a bull is the highest offering. So it usually was brought as a communal offering because it was so expensive. One person, there are people, of course, who could afford that, but for the most part, it was reserved for a communal offering. That if a community, let's say, violated some law unknowingly, and there's a whole tractate in the Talmud that speaks about it, in Tractate Horayot, that if they did something unintentionally, they violated some law, they didn't know, they bring a bull. So, but a person can bring anywhere between a bull and grain, a handful of grain. That is also, if somebody is poor and they don't have the means, they can even bring a handful of grain. But if they bring it with their full intention, and that was the best they had, that's the way to do it. In the New Testament, there's a story of a woman who brought a penny and something very small, but but she really was credited for bringing more sacrifice than all these wealthy people. And the reason was that because for her, that was more than she could even afford. So it was the most she could bring. And that really, to understand offering and the tent of meeting and the sacrifices and this whole mechanism called temple, that what we call temple today, is to understanding these basic premises. One is that offering is a mechanism to come closer to God, closer to man. So you have to bring it from the heart and bring the best you have. The second is that it is a mechanism of a communal place that people come to, and in order to come closer to God and to man. Now, it used to be that people only came to the temple 3 times a year, if. So there were 3 pilgrimage holidays, which are Passover, Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths. So these were the 3 times a year. So one begins the ritual year. Passover begins the year. So today is the first day of spring. So that really, we only celebrate our holidays in the spring and the summer. All the other holidays that we have in the winter and fall really are came later in the Bible or in our tradition, but as a sacrificial holidays, they're all between Passover and Sukkot, Tabernacles, that ends just before the fall. It ends the season. So, but when people came, God says, don't come empty-handed. Because when you come, you need to bring something very meaningful for yourself. Otherwise, if you bring an empty offering without the full intention or bringing the best you have, it is actually, it boomerangs. It really becomes an insult to God. So it's better that you don't come and you don't do that whole ritual if you don't have the right intention to bring the best you have. And that's what God is telling us many times in the Bible. He said, I'm not interested in your bulls, for you to kill animals on the altar. I'm interested in you. And this is just a mechanism to come closer. So if you're not using it to come closer, then don't worry about it. It's actually going to be more insulting to me. It's like, think about somebody who comes to your birthday party and throws the gift in your face, like, here, take it. Right? So it's better if they didn't come. But if you come with your full spirit. So that really is the most important thing to understand. Now, there are different types of offerings. So think of the offerings that supposed to connect us to God. But as human beings, we have different situations in life. So there different situations call for different offerings to bring us back to God, right? The ideal situation that we're always in the presence of God, Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, as the proverb said, it's in Psalm, I see God always in front of me. and many synagogues have this verse written on top of the Holy Ark, because the point is really to see God all the time, to always be close to God all day long. From when we open our eyes in the morning and we say, Modeh ani or Moda ani, I am thankful, and until we go to sleep and we say the Shema on the bed. So it is constant, and the Siddur, our prayer book, supposed to literally, Siddur means organizer. It organizes our day that we do not fall away from God at any moment on our day. It really is incredible if you think about it. When we eat, when we go to the bathroom, everything we do, we're supposed to be connecting it to God. So that's ideal. But as human beings, as flawed human beings, creatures, we're not always consistent that way. So in order to come back to God, then we have different offerings. So the Torah today goes through all these different offerings, and we will talk about it later. But if we start with the ultimate offering, and it actually was the beginning. It was actually the first offering was the Passover offering that the people of Israel brought before they left Egypt, and that was an offering of thanksgiving. They were giving thanks to God for leaving, and in that offering you partake, you eat the animal. The opposite of that, or all the way on the other side of the spectrum, we have the burnt offering. Some call it Holocaust. And that's where the word Holocaust came from because it burns out, it burns up. We don't enjoy any of it. We don't even have the skin afterward. It all becomes ash. So that's the other side of the range of offering, and everything in between. We have a sin offering for sins that we committed. So we eat some of it, and then some of it goes to the priests, and they can also use the skin of the animals for to benefit financially from it. But there's something that is across the board in all the offering, that when the priest offers the animal for the person who brought it, he puts his hand on the animal's head. Says you should lay a hand upon the head of the burnt offering, that it may be acceptable in your behalf in expiation for you. So there's something about that. This is another thing we have to understand about offering. What is it about putting the hand on the animal? So of course, you know the phrase, you should put your money where your mouth is. This is pretty much what it is. It means you have to connect to that animal that is on the altar. Really, it was supposed to be you on the altar, because any sin separates us from God. That's what it really means. The word in Hebrew, lehachti or chet, means to move away from the target. And if the target is always God, and we sin, it means that we veer off from that target. And if the target is God, it means that the target is life. And if we veer off from the source of life, then we deal death in our lives. So in order to come back to it, we have to bring some sort of an offering that brings us back. So the point of putting the hand on the head of the animal is to say it is I who's supposed to be on this altar. And just because God is a merciful God and doesn't want me to die now because of a sin, then I'm bringing a substitute, and that substitute is a monetary value, an animal that I care about, and so forth. So that's the other mechanism of the offering. Now, the name of the book, even though in English it translated as Leviticus, the word Vayikra in Hebrew means, and he was called upon. God called Moses. So, of course, we look at this as God as you know, when the phrase God calls on people, right? He's called to, or this is a calling in somebody's life, right? You've heard that many times. So this is where it comes from, that God calls on people. And one of the things I learned from Father Roy, it's a beautiful phrase that he said, God does not call the qualified, God qualifies the called. So many people feel inadequate to what they're called to do. So they're put in a challenge in life. Somebody, they need to now react in a certain way, but they say, you know what, I can't. It's too big, too much for me. And we know that many people don't adhere to the call. But those who do say, Hineni, here I am. So I may not see the path forward or how I'm going to be able to overcome this. But God, if you say that this is what I'm called to do, I'm going to take the first step. I'm going to do the Naaseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. God doesn't ever reveal the end to us. Only maybe in generality, when he said to Abraham, you will become a father of many nations. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and you will have the land and the children. But he doesn't tell him how he's going to get there or in what capacity it's going to be. What he tells him is take one step at a time, right? Lech lecha. To the land I will show you. So when we are in a journey with God, this is the way we do it. We take one step at a time. So when we're called, this is the name of this book is Vayikra. Because if you don't have that feeling that God is calling you, and again, God can call you for a little thing, can call you for a big thing. But if you don't hear that voice of God in your life, then you're not going to be able to really bring the offerings and to be close to God and have close relationship with God. Now, I don't know how other people hear God, but it's that inner voice. It's that very subtle voice in our lives that you can easily say, oh, it was just my subconscious, or it was just a thought I had in my mind. It doesn't mean anything. Well, those thoughts that you say don't mean anything, especially if they repeat themselves and you keep pushing them out the door, these are the voices that God is telling you to adhere to. So Vayikra, when God calls on Moses, now we know that Moses had been called before, and he rejected God in the beginning. He pushed back against it, but then he adhered to it, of course, and he embraced his position. So it's interesting that the introduction to the book of Leviticus, how to conduct the temple, the tent of meeting, and that's why it's called the tent. It's very important. The name, the original name, the tent of meeting. We call it temple or synagogue or house of learning or whatever it is, but a church today. But it's very important to remember the original name that God designated for the meeting of man is a tent, not even a building. It's a movable thing. A tent, very simple, a tent of meeting. So when you're called upon to do something, don't expect it to be only in a big palace of gold. And if you don't see something very elaborate, it doesn't mean that it comes from God. The opposite. When a lot of times when we go into on the pilgrimages to Israel, when we do the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem in the old market, Father Roy likes to say that this is actually how it happened in Jesus's life when he was called upon and to carry his cross, right? Then it was in a busy, noisy market, because especially people who come from America and places that they only pray at churches, they are used to the quiet, to the isolation, to be able to worship in a very kind of a protected environment. But when you go to the market in Jerusalem, all of you have been there, of course, know it's crowded, it's smelly, it's noisy. Really, this is where holiness happens. When you look at the temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish worship, it was a slaughterhouse. I mean, if you look at it only externally, and blood and the smell, and the Talmud says that one of the 10 miracles that happened in Jerusalem was that no woman aborted because of the smell, which I learned that women can have a miscarriage because of very bad smell. But the Talmud says it was a miracle because it was so awful, the smell of all the sacrifices there. That's one. And all the pilgrims, think about it, at least 1 million people that were so crowded in Jerusalem. And the other miracle, one of the other 10 miracles that is listed in the Talmud about those times when people came to Jerusalem to offer in the pilgrimage holidays, it says that nobody said, I don't have room. There was always room for more people. And it was so crowded. And another miracle that is listed is that they were literally shoulder to shoulder like that, and very crowded. They couldn't even bend. So how did they even bend down to pray? And the Talmud lists one of the miracles that when they were standing, there was no room in between them. But somehow when they were bowing down for the prayers, a space was created for them. So anyway, but what it's trying to tell us, that don't expect God to only appear in golden palaces. God appears in the tents, in a movable tent, which means God will appear everywhere and anywhere. So that is the essence of this whole mechanism called the temple, because what it really is, the big question that is asked about the temple, or that tent of meeting or the sanctuary of God, is if we believe that God is everywhere and in any situation in life, how come we limit God into one space? And we say, this is where the glory of God rests, and the Holy of Holies, and so forth. Well, that's exactly the dichotomy that we live in. That, of course, God is everywhere. And that is by the idea of the tent, movable tent of meeting. That's what it means, that God is everywhere all the time. But this is a mechanism for us to come closer to God, to have a ritual, because we're human beings. We need rituals. And everybody has a ritual. One time, one of the congregants, actually their family member, said to me when I first met her, she said, the daughter of an old congregant, she said, the first time I met her, she said to me, Rabbi, I never come to synagogue. Meaning she expected me to know out front, don't ever try to get me to come to synagogue. And I looked at her and I said, so what you're saying is that you don't go to synagogue religiously. So she looked at me and she's like, you got me. So we all have rituals, whether we want it or not. So the question is, what type of rituals should we have? What are the healthy rituals to adopt in our life? So we all breathe, right? But we want to breathe air, clean air. We always eat. We have to eat, but we don't want to eat junk food. We want to read, but we need to read the good material that enhances us, not junk. So anything you bring in, right? We are what we eat physically, or what we eat, spiritually. We become what we bring into our world, into our life. So what God is telling us, I am now going to have a ritual for you that will cleanse you, that will be healthy for your soul. Now, it used to be animal sacrifices, and as we know, we don't have that ritual. But actually, Maimonides says we will not have it even in the third temple. So, which I'm going to be happy if we won't have that, as someone who doesn't eat animals, and for exactly that reason, that I think we mistreat the animals. Some would say, when I had my Hasidic rabbi friend last Shabbat, those who were here for dinner heard him say and explain how they view the sacrifices. And actually, he spoke at our Project Genesis on Sunday, and he explained how they see animal sacrifice. So they don't see it as killing the animal that way, because he's also a shochet, someone who slaughters animals. He's a ritual slaughterer. He said that the animals are souls that came to the world to just correct one little thing. We were talking about souls that come back to this world, and eventually our soul, in order to go up to heaven and to be able to sit under the throne of God and enjoy God's glory, it has to be a clean soul. So we come to this world to cleanse our soul. And animals are souls that don't have to correct a lot, just a little bit. So when they come to the world and we slaughter them and eat them, that actually elevates them and they fulfill their mission. Okay, I don't know. I don't necessarily see it that way, but to each his own. But the idea is that God gave us mechanisms in this temple to be able to cleanse ourselves, and we'll look now what is exactly that mechanism. I have to just say again that when Maimonides says that in the future temple we won't have animal sacrifice, he refers to the fact that in his view, the animal sacrifices were only meant to be a substitute to what was prevalent before that when people were sacrificing people. So human sacrifice, it came to put blood for blood. So just to substitute that and wean us off human sacrifice. But now that we really don't even have that in our mind as a ritual in anywhere in the world, hopefully, then we don't really need it. And prayers will be satisfactory. And instead of having two altars in the tent of meeting, the altar for animals and the incense, will only have the incense. So in one sense, the church, the Catholic Church, adopted a lot of our bells and smells from the temple, and they kept the incense. They kept of course, the bells, and they don't do human sacrifice because they believe that Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. No need for more sacrifice. But for whatever reason, the future temple in Maimonides' mind would be more like that we will not have animal sacrifice, but we would have the incense and the other rituals like the menorah, the showbread, and so forth. Okay, so now getting into the mechanism itself of what we're called upon and what to bring an offering. It is you bring an animal, and the animal, if it's supposed to mimic who we are, then different parts of the body connect to different types of sins. So, for example, if we wanted to hurry and walk into a place of indecency, then our legs committed the sin. Of course, all sins come from the heart and the mind and everything, but physically, where the sin was, it was in the legs. If we cheated with our hands, we shortchanged somebody that came to our store, so we committed it with our hands, or maybe we hit somebody with our hands. Then the limbs of the animals were offered. The inner parts, for example, the kidneys. The kidneys symbolize moralities, the ethics. So if we did something to put something as a stumbling block before the blind person, not necessarily physically too, but figuratively, cheating in business and so forth, that is supposed to be where that sin is housed in the kidneys, and so forth. Now, then it says there's something that we read, and it's very interesting to say that the priest shall tear it open by its wings without severing it, and turn it into smoke on the altar. That's when it's if it's a bird offering, and upon the wood that is on the fire. And now it says, and it's a repeating phrase, it is a burnt offering, an offering by fire, a pleasing odor to God. I'm sure you've heard that many times, the pleasing odor to God. What is that pleasing odor to God? Didn't we just say that this whole ritual was very smelly and it looked and felt like a slaughterhouse? So that is why actually we have the incense, because the incense came to balance the smell in the slaughterhouse. But if we take it figuratively, of course, it meant that it is when you bring something from your heart and you go through the ritual, that is a pleasing odor to God. And in other places in the Bible, God says, your odor came to me as smelly, as not good smell. And it's always in the reference in lehavish. Lehavish is ovish, is the bad smell of a carcass or an old fruit, but normally from a carcass, which means that if you don't bring it from your heart, it's a carcass. So how do you know if it was pleasing to God or not? It's through that that odor. Now there was a special recipe to create that incense. There's 11 components that came together to create that good smell. But actually, we're not allowed to make that incense because we don't have the temple. Only at the temple. Very interestingly, one of the components of the 11 components was the chelbonah, and the chelbonah, what is said about the chelbonah, that it was the stinkiest smell on earth. That a woman can abort, have a miscarriage because of that smell. It's very interesting. But when it was connected and was part of all the other smells, it actually gave the best combination, which means that without the chelbonah, without that very smelly bad odor, we wouldn't have gotten the best odor. This is incredible too. And these are all lessons that we have to learn from bringing the offering. And what does that mean? If we look at this is the temple, this is where everybody comes to meet. What it's telling us, that if these were members of the community, even if they stink, right? That we say, oh, this guy stinks. Of course, not necessarily physically stinking, but their character, they stink. But if they are part of a community, of a faithful community that comes and offers, and it's part of all the ritual, then it is the most pleasing to God that we actually include everybody. There's a whole tractate that speaks about everybody has all Israel has a place in the next world, meaning to come and sit under the throne of God and enjoy his glory. But then it says, these are the ones who do not have a place. So we always have to understand that there are always exceptions. So it doesn't mean that any behavior or any conduct in the temple is acceptable. That's not what it means. But what it means is that we supposed to accept people that we may think that they're very stinky, but there's a with the community together, they bring good odor, and it keeps repeating itself in pretty much every sacrifice. It says, as an offering by fire of pleasing odor to God. So this is a another idea of conducting ourselves in the temple. So of course, this book goes through many rituals, and it goes down to after it introduces offerings in general, it goes to every offering, details of every offering. And it begins with the offering of well-being, as we said. And if you offer of the herd, so you can, in each offering, you can offer the most expensive one, or according to your category of financial grade, you can bring an offering that is accommodating your financial situation. Okay, we'll stop here, and then we can entertain some questions. Any questions? Let me
Yeah, I'm collecting my
yeah.
questions. Having a oh, do I speak first? I don't want to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Um, having a wait. Is that any relation to henna?
No, chelbona. It's a different. It's not henna. It's chelbona. It comes
Henna.
more from like chelev. Chelev is the fat. Is a certain fat we're not supposed to eat. But I don't know if it's exactly related to it, but the word definitely is related to that.
Why is the kidney associated with morality and there are two kidneys, right? We have two kidneys.
Hmm.
So which kidney? And
The left or the right? That's a good question. I don't know. It doesn't. I think the fact that it comes from an organ that has two, it's interesting because it could be the scale of morality or ethics.
like there's two sides to the scale.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Mm.
Okay. I'll stop the recording.
Oh, I don't get. What about other questions?
You have another question?
Oh, you don't want me to ask any more questions?
Yep, please. Yes. I'm trying a new thing now here. I'm recording the questions.
Oh, okay. So this is, I guess, now we're waiting for the third temple, right? For the third temple. Okay.
Hmm.
But it's it's a man-made constructed temple. So what are we waiting for?
Okay. I don't know if I should record this answer, but I will. Well, I mean, really, it's not. This is a well, first of all, there are different opinions, like everything else, is that if the temple will come from heaven as is, God will bring it down, or we would construct it. So I actually think it's a combination of both, because I see it as Noah's Ark
Uh-huh.
to last through the flood. It had to be well constructed, right? But even more than that, it had to be perfectly sealed. And a human being cannot perfectly do anything. So it's said that after Noah, he created, he built the ark. They all went into the ark, and then God sealed it on the outside. So without God sealing it on the outside or bringing the blessing or somehow putting the last touch, then it wouldn't have survived the flood. Same thing with the temple. God has to when the first temple or the tent of meeting was inaugurated, it said that the cloud rested upon the tent of meeting, which means that it's God's stamp that he approves of this and he seals it, gives it that final touch. So the third temple would be the same. Now I don't know how the third temple would be brought about. There's different ways to think about it. I mean, I personally think that because we have now the Abrahamic faiths that did not exist when we constructed the first tent of meeting, it would have to look like something that we all share, that Jews, Christians, and Muslim would share. So, and there are prophecies that said, we will be, this will be a house of prayer for all nations, and we will stand shoulder to shoulder. So, I wrote extensively about it when I was proposing the interfaith peace agreement in Israel, that we have to look at things from a religious perspective. This is a religious war battle, so the peace will only come through also religious conversation. Unfortunately, after October 7th, everybody realized that yes, we are in a religious war that hopefully is not going to end in destruction of anything, but just building upon what is there. So it would be very nice if we all could pray together. But the point is that the third temple is called Rehoboth. It is the opposite of the word Egypt,
That's
narrow.
where you're from.
What?
That's where you're from, right?
Right. I'm from Rehoboth, Israel, and that's why I was connecting to that subject. The three wells that Isaac dug in the book of Genesis after his father Abram died are called like the three. The rabbis teach us that it's like the three temples. The first two wells were destroyed, and the third one will not be destroyed. But it says before the third well that he dug, it says Isaac moved from there, and he dug the third well, and they didn't quarrel over it. So, and it lasted, and the rabbis are telling us the third temple will last forever. So, but two things to hear in this phrase: he moved from there, either physically or mentally or something. He changed something. So if we each only keep our siloed faith, and not willing to face the other faith, then it's not gonna work, of course. So that has to happen, some sort of a interreligious dialogue, interfaith, and so forth. And the second thing, it said that they didn't quarrel over it. So that's really the key. Because if it's going to be another house of worship that people fight on, then like if something happened to the Temple Mount now or the dome, and it will come through means of war, then it may not last again, because then somebody else is going to want to retaliate, and it has to come through peaceful means. So like the faith will agree to be together, or like agree to focus on what they agree upon. So I'll give you the example. For 20 years now, teaching at Project Genesis with Father Roy, we from the beginning said we will concentrate on what we agree on,
Mhm.
not what we don't agree on. We know what we don't agree on. So then if we just concentrate on that, then there's no point. There's no relationship. But if we start talking about what we agree on, so for 20 years now, we've been speaking about what we agree on. So that should be the mechanism, the approach of, yes, we're different faiths, but as I say to people all the time on the pilgrimages and our classes, I don't share your faith, but I share your faith.
Mhm.
So we're all faithful people. We believe in the one God, and we may have different ways of practicing or the ritual or interpreting some of the relationship, between us and God. But there's something that we all share. So if we concentrate on that, that will be, I think that is how you start the foundation of building the third
Your
temple.
sound is very. Your sound is very. I'm sorry. Is going in and out. I don't know if that's just from my end.
Mm-hmm. We can hear you. And then God
Oh,
will give his blessing over it. We will see something and feel something that God has said, yes, you now, after 3 attempts, you got it. And you learn the kind of the key to everything, the formula, which is all inclusive. Again, it doesn't have to be that everybody always does the same. Like in the original temple, there was holy of holies, there was the women's section, there was
well,
the
then to what
nations
extent is that your?
section. What?
So
So there
then the
could be the
third
Jewish section, the
temple
Christian
is
section,
really the
the
third
the, the
temple.
Muslim section, but somehow we will be
Is
under one roof
the
and be
Druze
able
section.
to coexist like that in harmony. And then God will say, approved, and then he will bring his final seal from heaven somehow.
Rabbi, I never heard that before about the third temple being inclusive of the three religions. Is that something that people believe? I mean, most people believe, or is that something from the Project Genesis?
No, it's a biblical in not Malachi and um I forget there are a couple of prophecies that said, first of all, that the house of in the future, my house will be a house of all nations. It's actually the verse that is etched to our building here in Greenport. It's if it's from Zechariah, um, maybe Zechariah. That it says that my house will be a house of all nations. So at the time there were no Christianity and Islam, but still it refers to a house that will accommodate everybody.
Do Orthodox
Everybody who
people
believes in
accept
the
that?
one that believes in one God. Not if you believe in
Right.
if you still a pagan, yes, it's not your house.
But like, do Orthodox people talk about it this way or not?
More and more, more and more. If of course, if you're radical in any faith, you don't want any inclusivity, and many times it even reflects within your religion, right? That if you're fundamental, I guess fundamental may not be a bad word because you're fundamental. But if you're radical or if you are extremist to a degree that you exclude, you a lot of times it starts with your own faith. People exclude uh, one of my English teachers in college, in Yeshiva University, said her father in Brooklyn is a very religious man, but they were so ultra orthodox that they didn't count him in a minyan, in a quorum of 10, because he didn't his beard wasn't full. You know what I mean? So if you're radical, you exclude. If you are, so it doesn't mean that you have to include everybody. As I said that, and it's very important to 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 qualify that. But it's a matter of attitude. So some people have the attitude of excluding to begin with, right? Their attitude is an attitude of excluding. Who should I exclude today? And there are people whose predisposition is to include. So you include as much as you can. It doesn't mean you include everybody. Even Abraham, who was the most inclusive person, right? That's why God chose him. He was an inclusive person. He brought everybody into his tent. But even he had a limit. He said to the angels that came to visit him, the three angels, he said, the first thing he said to them, come to my tent, but you have to wash your feet first. Meaning, don't bring your paganism or your idol worshiping into my tent. There are certain things I'm not going to tolerate in my tent.
Okay, but just explain something to me. We're always saying that we're the chosen people, the Jewish people. So how does one include the Muslims and the Christians then? I don't quite follow it.
That's a very good question. So first of all, it depends on how you view Christians and Muslims. If you see them as Abrahamic faiths that believe in the one God, then you already they have a foot in the door because they believe in one God. We take it for granted now because most of the world believes that. But when Abraham started 4,000 years ago, that was not what people believe. That's why he uprooted himself. So that's one way to look at it. They can be included.
Are you equating Allah with the Jew? I mean, is Allah the same then as the Jewish God? I don't get it.
If there's one God,
yeah,
and they believe in one God,
right?
Whatever they call it or their relationship with him, we may not agree to that. Right. Just like we don't agree with the Trinity, the Christian Trinity,
right?
But still, Catholics or Christians believe that within the Trinity, there's one God.
I see. Okay.
You know what I mean? So we don't look at, of course, if you're fundamental anything or extremist, you'll say, no, I'm not accepting the Catholic Trinity or the Muslim Allah that says that Allah doesn't have a son, right? Meaning they more closer to Judaism said that God doesn't have the Trinity. But we can, disagree with Islam on other many things. But even Maimonides says we can pray in a mosque. There's no problem theologically to pray in a mosque. In a church, a little more problematic because of the Trinity. But when you understand that they even see that as one God, yeah, of course, we're not the same faith. We don't have icons, in a synagogue. We don't do that. A Catholic church will have icons. So how do you, of course, yeah, Leah?
You too. Bye.
So you can look at it that way, that we don't agree on everything. Otherwise, we would be the same faith. But if there's one God and they believe in one God, then by default they believe in the same God. They may not have the same relationship with God, but it's one God. And when we include other faiths, of course, it can't, it has to be within the parameters of the one God, and some other things. But even if we are under one roof, there's an attempt to do that. It's a very, very nice attempt in Abu Dhabi. In Abu Dhabi today, they built a few years ago. They built one complex. It's called the Abrahamic project or something like that. They have three buildings that are the same size each, and one is a mosque, one is a synagogue, and one is a church, and they're in one big complex. So that is the first attempt to say, okay, there's an Abrahamic union in many ways. We all believe in Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the descendants and so forth. So there's definitely commonalities there, and we will learn how to bring it under one canopy, one way or another. So that is, I would say, the biggest issue is not building the temple, the constructing the building. It's really constructing the relationship, the geopolitical interfaith relationship first, and then building the temple, the building itself. It will be like as if God brought it from heaven. We'll figure out how to do that quickly. And then, of course, I personally believe that at the end, just like the other, I'm bringing these two faiths together, that one says, we will build a temple, and the other one says, it'll be brought down from heaven. I think it's a combination of both. We build it from the ground, and God seals the roof.